Dane Warhol stood in front of the steel dawn and watched as the guard carried his box with tools. 7 screwdrivers, multimeter with a cracked screen, a pair of protective gloves burned through by humancy. All that remained after 3 years of fit in a box from cartridges. The guard even didn't look at in eyes. He just put a box on the jump and slammed the grate. Dane stood and listened as with behind the baselight, their training sessions. That's they, for a raid on Portal of V. There was his life just yesterday. And today, Marcus Wayne gathered all the team in the jub and announced the reduction. 4 of 6. Dane wasn't when he saw his name first on the list. Marcus didn't even explain. He just looked through him and said that the guild no longer need people who don't can stand in formation. What? The budget for maintain equipment has been by half. What? Now repairs order from contractors. Then he added a phrase which Dane will remember for his life. He said that Dane even had an awakened one. That he just... equipment. Someone of hunters in the room snorted. No one objected. Dane clenched his fleet and walked without looking back. 3 years he repaired their swords. He tightened the hilts. He calibrated the sights on crossbows. I repaired dents on breastplates after every raid. 3 years he was first and left last. For 3 years his skill structure was for the guild. E rank. The only thing gave it system upon awakening. The ability to see the inner structure of objects. Every crack, every strain in the metal, every weak point. In this was cost at all. The monster doesn't that you see its skeleton if you can pierce the hide. But for repair, it was perfect. Dane found flaws that were missed the scanners. Noticed fatigue started earlier than the sword break in the dotching. Once he stopped the dispatch shipment of bulletproof vests because that I saw micro cracks in the plates. Marcus then did say thank you. He said that Dane is delaying the raid. That was 2 years ago. From then Dane realized one thing. In World of the Awakened, the value of a person is measured by rank. E rank is not the same. It's something that under the bottom. Most E ranks worked as couriers or cleaners at warehouses guilds. Some took jobs as porters at landfills of monstrous materials. Landfills. This, a story. After each cleared portal, tons of waste. Bones, shells, organs, nuclei of a low rank. Everything of this was out the city and dumped into special areas. 7 years ago, when the TAC and in the world portals, everyone thought that monsters was the end of civilization. Then, the TAC, the awakened. People with combat classes, swordsmen, archers, mages, tanks, healers. The system distributed power to its rules. Someone got an S and could single-handedly close the portal. Someone received E and could only watch. For 7 years, the world has changed. The guilds became corporations. Portals became businesses. Materials from the bodies of tech did worth anything. Because that, no one knew that with them, do arms corporations worked with steel and composites. The monsters were for them, consumable, expendables. Kill. Get a reward from the association. Dispose of the body. Period. The system never did give classes related with processing. Not a single crafters. Not a single engineer. Monster materials. Only fighters. Only strength. Dane walked through the city and thought about it. About that how the tech of A is stronger than titanium. He knew that. His skill showed him the structure every time when he took the fragment. Fibers, density, energy channels inside the bone through which, in life, flowed the bone of the monster. He saw all this and could do with about do. That's that. Seeing and creating are 2 different things. Because he didn't have a class, he didn't have tools, he didn't have a workshop. He only had a gaze that revealed the treasure hidden within the trash. Dane made it to his apartment. One room. The kitchen doubled as the entryway. The window looked out onto the wall of the neighboring house. He sat down on the bed and set the toolbox on the floor. He checked his phone balance. 12 gold. Rent is 8. Food for a month is at least 3. The math was simple. He had 1 gold in a month to find a job. With his rank and reputation, his chances were close to 0. Marcus would make sure everyone knew. Dane, useless. Not even an awakened. Inventory. Dane lay down and closed his eyes. Darkness stood before him. No plan, no hope, no meaning. Then the darkness vanished. A panel flashed before his eyes. Blue light filled the room. Dane sat up on the bed and stared at the lines floating in the air. A system window, but not like the one from the Awakening. A different one. Symbols he had never seen before. The text appeared slowly, line by line. The system reported that the activation condition had been met, that a carrier with the structure analysis skill had been detected, possessing minimal combat potential and maximum understanding of materials, that a unique class had been unlocked, monster mechanic, that he was the first and only carrier of this class in the world. Dane read it 3 times. His hands were shaking. He reached out and touched the panel. It was real, hard as glass and warm. The system displayed the class description. 4 abilities. Disassembly. Allows you to break down a monster's body into components while preserving its properties as much as possible. Synthesis. Allows you to combine components into new items. Armor. Amplifiers. Contours. Constructs. Allows you to create autonomous mechanisms. Turrets. Drones. Combat golems. And the 4th. Structural analysis. His old skill. A useless E-rank skill. The system presented it as the core of the new class, the base module upon which everything else is built. Dane sat in the darkness and stared at the blue light. For 3 years, he'd been told he was worthless. For 3 years, he'd repaired other people's swords and kept quiet. For 3 years, his skill had been considered trash. Now the system was saying the opposite. It was saying that it was precisely this skill, precisely this understanding of structure, precisely this view of the world that made him the only candidate for a class that hadn't existed before. Dane closed the panel, opened it again. It hadn't disappeared. Then he stood up, put on his jacket. He grabbed his toolbox. He left the apartment. It was 3 in the morning. The monster materials dump operated around the clock. Waste from night raids was dumped there. Security at the dump was a formality. 1 sleepy E-rank guard at the gate. Cameras that no one watched. A fence with holes. Dane knew this dump. He'd been here when the guild sent him for cheap spare parts. He walked between mountains of bones and armor, and for the first time in his life, his skill didn't show him trash. It showed him raw materials. Dane stopped in front of a pile of Class C wyvern ribs. He activated analysis. The system displayed the data. Density 4 times that of alloyed steel. Residual mana in the fibers. Natural channels for conducting energy. Processing potential. High. Dane picked up a rib. He activated dissection. The bone in his hands split into layers. Outer shell. Inner skeleton. A core with residual mana. 3 components. Pure. Ready. The system suggested parameters for each. Then, Dane activated synthesis. He joined the outer shell with the core. He channeled the residual mana through the natural conduits. The bone changed shape in his hands. It compacted. It sharpened. 4 minutes later, he was holding a knife. A 20-centimeter blade. White as snow. Light as a feather. So sharp that Dane cut himself just by gripping the handle a little too tightly. The system issued an evaluation. A knife made from a wyvern's rib. Class C. 6 times stronger than steel equivalents. Self-sharpening using residual mana. Market value, 340 gold. At the bottom, in small print, the system added a note. His former employer paid him 5 gold a month. Irony noted. Dane stood in the junkyard at 3 in the morning. He held a knife in his hands that cost more than his annual salary. Tons of material lay around him. Tons of trash that the whole world had been shunning for 7 years. Tons of raw materials for a man with the right class. Dane tucked the knife into his belt. He gathered as many bones and armor pieces as he could carry. He slung the bag over his shoulder and headed back to the city. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't shouting with joy. He was calculating. 12 gold pieces in his account. Renting a basement in the industrial zone costs 2 gold pieces. That leaves money for food and basic tools. 1 knife is 340 gold pieces. 10 knives is 3,400. In a month, he'll earn more than he would in 50 years in the guild. If he finds buyers. If no one finds out before it's time. If he manages to get on his feet before the world notices that an E rank with a class that doesn't exist is operating in the dump. Dane walked down the empty road, feeling the weight of the sack on his shoulder. The bones clattered against each other with every step. The sound was dull and rhythmic, like a hammer striking an anvil, like the beginning of something new. The basement was on the outskirts of the industrial zone, in a neighborhood which locals called Rusty Corner, the former warehouse of some logistics company that went due to a year after the rift. 2 gold a month for 40 square meters of concrete, without windows, 1 lamp under the ceiling. Heating, that was work. Dane paid for month in advance and dragged the sack of bones inside. He set out tools on the wooden table which found by the bins. Screwdrivers, pliers, hacksaw for metal. A pathetic, but for start will do. The system suggested that exactly was needed. It showed diagrams, guided my hands. The first week, Dane slept in 3 hours a day. In the morning, he walked to the dump. He was collecting material, bones, shells, sometimes low level of a low rank that hunters discarded because that the was did not cover transportation. During the day, he worked. He took things apart, analyzed, he assembled. At night, the first 3 days, he made knives. The system evaluated each, and Dane noted how his skill. The first knife, 340 gold. The second, 360. Fifth, 410. With each time he understood how to direct mana through the channels, how to use the structure of a knot fight against it. To the week, he had 8 knives and 1 dagger. Total cost, according to the was more 3,000 gold. The problem was in the other, selling. Dane could enter the equipment openly, for it did their registration with association. There was name. He was E rank, without guild, without connections, and without reputation. For the Awakened was by 3 organizations. The association issued licenses and monitored over quality. The guilds purchased in bulk from trusted suppliers. TerraCore held 60% of the market and put pressure its competitors with prices. Log into this system was almost impossible. Dane thought for 2 days. Then a solution. Black market. Not fangs and not their level. Ordinary gray zone. Forums where lone hunters sold and bought equipment without middlemen, without licenses, no warranties, and no questions. Dane created an account. He posted a photo of a knife, wrote the specifications, set 200 gold pieces. Half lower the system, but still in 10 times more than the best steel knife on market. The first comment appeared an hour later. Someone wrote that it was a fake. The second asked what it was made of. The third offered 50. The fourth wrote that if it was a real wyvern bone, he was willing to meet up and check it out. It was an S-rank hunter named Ted Warner. Dane agreed to meet him. They met at a cafe near the portal zone. Ted turned out to be a large man with a scar running across his entire left arm. A typical veteran hunter. Dane placed the knife on the table. Ted picked it up and froze. He turned it over in his hands. He ran his finger along the blade, cut himself, looked at the drop of blood, then looked at Dane. He asked who had made it. Dane replied that he had. Ted didn't believe him. He said that wyvern bone was impossible to work with, that dozens of blacksmiths had tried and none had succeeded, that the material crumbles when heated and cracks when forged. Dane explained that he hadn't heated or forged it, that he works with the bone's natural structure, not against it, but with it. Ted was silent for a minute. Then he took out his wallet. Paid 200 gold, in cash. Then asked if there were any more. Dane said there were. Ted bought 3 knives, 600 gold. Before leaving, he stopped and said he had a raid on a B-rank portal in a week. He asked if Dane could make something more substantial than a knife. Dane replied that he could, but he needed B-grade materials. Ted nodded. He said he'd bring some. That was the first contact, first client, first money. Dane returned to the basement with 600 gold pieces and the feeling that the world had begun to shift. The next day, he bought proper tools. A vise, a sander, a set of diamond-coated drill bits, a stainless steel workbench. A day later, reviews appeared on the forum. Ted wrote that the wyvern bone knife surpassed anything he'd held in his hands in 10 years of hunting, that the blade didn't dull, that the balance was perfect, that he felt a slight vibration when Mana was nearby. The post garnered 100 comments in a day. 12 people wrote to Dane. 7 wanted to buy. 3 wanted to know how he did it. 2 offered to collaborate. Dane sold 5 more knives over the next 3 days. Total revenue for the first 2 weeks amounted to 1,600 gold. That was more than he had earned at the guild in all 3 years. Ted returned as promised. He brought 2 sacks of B-grade materials, armored crab bones, armor plates, 4 medium-sized cores. Dane activated analysis and nearly choked. B-rank materials were a whole other world. The density of the armored crab's bones was 12 times that of steel. The armor plates contained a natural shock absorption system. The cores pulsed with stable mana. The system generated new recipes. Not knives. Armor. Dane worked for 4 days straight. He dissected the armor plates into layers. He isolated the shock-absorbing structure. He wove in a bone frame for rigidity. He connected the core to the circuit so the plates would be powered by mana and repair micro-damage. On the 5th day, he held the breastplate in his hands. White with gray streaks, light as a leather jacket. The system valued it at 2,800 gold. Protection class, B+. This meant that a B-rank hunter wearing this breastplate could withstand a blow that would normally be fatal. Ted tried it on. His eyes went wide. He said it was impossible. That a B-rank breastplate from Terracore weighed 12 kilograms and cost 4,000, and this one weighed 2 and cost less, and was made from junk, made from what his guild dumps in the landfill after every raid. Dane didn't correct him. It's not junk. It never was junk. It's just that until today, no one had seen it. Ted paid full price. Then he sat down on a chair in the basement and said he had friends. Rank B and C hunters. Good people. They need gear. Not overpriced corporate junk, but real weapons. He asked if he could bring them in. Dane thought about it. More customers means more money, more materials, more opportunities, but also more attention. Every new person is a risk of a leak. One wrong conversation with the wrong person, and the guilds will find out about him. Terracore will find out. Marcus will find out. Dane looked at the basement walls, at the table piled high with bones and tools, at the breastplate that could save a life. Then he said to bring them. But no names, No addresses, no photos. Meetings only through Ted. Payment only in cash. Ted nodded. He stood up. He held out his hand. Dane shook it. The handshake was firm. Like a contract. Like a promise. That night, Dane didn't sleep. He sat on the basement floor and counted. In 2 weeks, he'd gone from 12 gold pieces to 2,000. From a toolbox to a workshop. From nobody to a man with clients. But that was just the beginning. Knives and breastplates were fine. But the system was showing him so much more. The list of recipes flashed with things that made his mouth go dry. Muscle enhancers, nerve circuits, energy shields, and most importantly, constructs. Autonomous mechanisms made of bones and cores, turrets, drones, golems. That was on the horizon. He needed A-rank materials. He needed resources. He needed time. But the horizon was moving toward him faster than Dane had expected. A month, the basement in Rusty Corner stopped to be just a basement. Dane hung above the entrance a sign. Hollow Forge. Empty Forge. I was in it in the morning when he was finishing the 3rd set of armor, and realized that works inside an empty building, creating from empty, according, in my opinion, of bones things that are worth Ted, gave the first group through 3 days after their agreement. 5 hunters, 3 S rank, 2 B rank, all came in bags of materials and cash. Dane took orders. 4 knives, 2 per set, 1 complete set of armor. Intake took a week. Each order he made by hand. Every item was to owner. Analysis of the structure showed him not only the material, but, and more, who will wearing it. Just, it moves. Where is shifting of gravity? Where is protection? And where freedom of movement? The hunters left in silence. They returned a week with new orders and new people. Word of mouth among hunters spread faster any advertisement. By the end, the first month after Hollow Forge passed 2028 clients. The amounted to 11,000 gold coins. Dane expanded the basement. He rented the adjacent space and knocked the wall. Now he was 80 square meters. A separate area for sorting, separate assembly for assembly, warehouse of materials. He bought an industrial workbench. The ventilation generator in case power. Everything is secret, everything without paperwork, everything in cash. Rumors spread quickly. On hunting for someone is making weapons from bones. Not decorative, combat ready. Superior steel counterparts in all parameters. The topic has 1,000 views in day. Opinions were divided. Some called it fake. Others posted photos of knives with results tests. One hunter of S rank recorded a video. He took a knife Dane and steel knife Terracore, class 5. Struck with both at the armored crab. A steel knife left a scratch. The bone went right through. The video has garnered 50-50 views. Dane saw it and realized that it was of silence was coming to an end. But before then the world got to it, to him came Kira Knox. She appeared in the basement without warning. Ted didn't bring her. She found it B-rank hunter. 24 years old. Specialization. Close combat. Pairs blades. Reputation. Best butcher in the sector. Kira didn't kill monsters with brute. She dissected them like a surgeon. Precise strikes into the joints. Incisions along nerve nodes. Minimal damage to tissues. Maximum preserved material. Other hunters crushed monsters into a job and threw 90% of the carcass. Kira kept 90% intact. She entered the job the workshop and put on table bag. Inside were ice of and wolf of A. Clean. No a single crack. No signs of overheating from magical attacks. Perfectly separated from the muscle tissue. Dane activated analysis and froze. These were the finest materials he had ever seen. Density. Off the charts. The mana in the fibers would be enough for 3 sets of armor. The energy channels were undamaged. Kira said she knew who he was, that she'd traced the supply chain from the forum to Ted, and from Ted to this basement. That she wasn't the type to blab, that she had a proposal. Dane listened. Kira explained. She kills A-rank monsters every week. The materials left after her work are top quality, but on the market, they're worth nothing. Hunters get paid for closing the portal, not for the carcasses. She throws away tens of thousands of gold worth of materials every month. If Dane can turn that into weapons, they'll both make more than any B-rank guild. Dane looked at the bones of the ice wolf and did the math. A-rank materials. You can make more than just knives and armor from them. You could make things that would change the rules. He agreed. They shook hands. Kira became the main supplier for Hollow Forge. The plan was simple. Kira brings the materials, Dane processes them. They split the profits. The first order of A-rank materials. A full combat set for Kira. Dane worked for 10 days. It was the most complex project he'd ever undertaken. The bones of the ice wolf reacted to temperature. The armor plates contained residual cold that could freeze the skin. The core pulsed erratically and threatened to crack under the wrong pressure. Dane dissected every element at the molecular level. The structural analysis was running at its limit. The system showed him thousands of assembly options, and he went through them one by one, searching for the ideal configuration. On the 6th day, he found it. The icy mana in the wolf's bones wasn't a problem. It was an amplifier. If channeled correctly, it created a cooling circuit that prevented the armor from overheating during impacts. Self-repair through crystallization. Microdamage was sealed by an icy crust in seconds. On the 10th day, the set was ready. Breastplate, shoulder guards, gauntlets, greaves. Pale blue in color with white streaks. As he moved, patterns of frost ran across the surface. The system evaluated the set. Grade A-, cost 12,000 gold. Note: an equivalent set from TerraCore costs 35,000 and weighs 4 times as much. Kira put on the armor. She moved in it as if nothing had changed. She performed a series of strikes with the paired blades. She crouched, she rolled, she hopped up. No restrictions. She stopped. She looked at her hands in the icy wolf bone gauntlets. Then she looked at Dane. She said it was the best thing she'd ever worn in her life. That in this armor, she could pass through an A-rank portal without support. Then she said something else. She said that a B-rank portal would open in the eastern sector next week. That the Iron Fang Guild had already received a contract to clear it. That they had a B-rank tank named Alden Grant on their roster. That Alden had lost his left leg below the knee in a raid 6 months ago. That he walks on a prosthesis. A steel one. A heavy one. One that slows him down by half. That the guild plans to write him off after this raid. That Alden knows this and is desperate. Dane listened. Then he asked what monster had taken his leg. Kira answered. A Titan. Class A. A Titan's bones are the strongest known. Stronger than diamond. Dane asked if any bones remained. Kira said that Alden's leg was in the guild's freezer as a trophy. Next to it lay the fragments of the Titan that had taken it. Dane asked for the fragments to be brought. That's it. Kira nodded. 2 days later, she brought a box. Inside were fragments of the Titan's bone. Dane activated analysis and held his breath for 3 seconds. Density. Beyond standard measurement scales. Structure. Multi-layered. Self-reinforcing. Each layer reinforces the next. Mana. Stable. Regenerative. The Titan's bone isn't just strong, it's alive. Even in death, it continues to micro-regenerate at the cellular level. Dane locked himself in the workshop for 4 days. He didn't eat. He slept in 20-minute bursts right on the workbench. The system showed him blueprints, each more complex than the last. He discarded them and built his own. A prosthetic leg. Not just a stick on a hinge. A full-fledged leg. From knee to foot. A titanium bone frame. Muscle fibers made from the tendons of an ice wolf. Nerve circuits for feedback. A C-rank core as a power source. The system resisted. It said the design was too complex for his current level. Dane ignored the warning and continued. On the fourth day, the prosthesis was ready. A white leg made of titanium bone. The joints moved smoothly. The toes bent. The foot sprang back when pressed. Dane activated analysis on the finished product. The system output the data. Leg prosthesis. Material: A-rank titanium bone. Compatibility: requires a direct connection to the carrier's manic channels. Strength: exceeds the original limb by 8 times. Functionality: full. Additional: running, jumping, combat maneuvers. Cost: undetermined. No analogs exist. Dane called Kira, told her to bring Alden. Alden Grant entered the workshop leaning on cane. The left leg was rolled up and fastened with a belt below the knee. Steel prosthesis lay in backpack on his book. Alden didn't carry it. Too heavy. 12 kilograms of dead of metal that rubbed stump until blood after an hour walking. He was a man. 192 centimeters, broad shoulders, hands that could bend a steel rod. A-rank, former, tank. Living shield for the group. 3 years he took for himself the blows that killed others. Titanium armor, man-powered stand, wall. That was in Guild. Alden Stina Grant. 6 months ago the wall collapsed. A-rank portal, Titan. A creature the size of his 2-story house. Alden held the front while the group reorganized, held for minutes. On 5th, the titanium broke the coma and struck with his tail. Alden placed a block. The block held. The leg didn't. The bone was shattered from the knee to the ankle. The healers saved the druck, but to restore could. Regeneration works only with soft tissues. The bones of the awakened, after mutation, too dense for magical restoration. Irony. His own power made him incurable. After the amputation, Alden a month lay in the hospital. Then a month drank. Then I tried to go back. Steel prosthesis. Training. Attempts to move as before. It worked out. With the prosthesis he was at its C rank, maybe B. At short distance. Without maneuvers. No jumps. No that speed of that saved the group. The Iron Fang held him in out of crash. But Alden saw how on it at, with pity, with awkwardness, as a broken tool that it's a shame to throw away. He recognized himself in those glances. He himself looked shared on blunted swords before disposal. Kira brought him to Hollow Forge, nothing explained, explaining. She said only that he see. Alden walked in. He saw the basement, tools, bones on the shelves. A guy in 3 years with dark under her eyes and calluses on every finger. Dane didn't say long speeches. He took out his from workbench and placed on the table. Alden froze. The white bone. Perfect shape of from knee to the toes, joints, flexions, foot with springy sole. He reached his and touched it. The bone was warm, not like steel. Warm as a living body. He felt a pulsation, light, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Dane explained. The prosthesis is made of titanium A-range. That same titanium. Kira retrieved the fragments from the guilds of the guild. Inside, nerve circuits made fibers of wolf and the core C-rank as source of energy. The prosthesis is connected to manic channels of the owner directly. This means that Alden will feel his leg. Not like a prosthesis, like my own. Alden remained silent for a long time. Then he asked how it costs. Dane said that it's free. Alden looked at him as if he'd heard an insult. He said he didn't accept handouts. Dane replied that it wasn't a handout, that he needed a head of security, that the workshop was growing and would soon attract the attention of people who wouldn't like what was going on here, that he needed someone who knew how the guilds worked from the inside, someone who knew how to hold the perimeter, someone who wouldn't run at the first sign of trouble. Alden looked at him, then at the prosthesis, then back at him. Then he sat down in a chair. He rolled up his pant leg, exposed his stump. Dane stepped forward. The installation took an hour. The prosthetic's neural circuits had to be synchronized with Alden's manic channels. The process was painful. Alden didn't make a sound. He just gripped the edge of the table so hard the wood cracked. When the synchronization was complete, Alden felt it. He felt his fingers, the cold of the concrete floor, the texture. He stood up, one foot on the floor, the other on the titanium bone, which felt like his own. He took a step, a second, a third, without a cane, without a limp, without pain. Then he picked up speed, ran across the workshop, turned around, jumped, landed on both feet. The titanium bone held up without a single creak. Alden stood in the middle of the basement, breathing heavily, not from fatigue, from something else. Kira stood by the wall, silent. Dane was putting away his tools. Alden said one word. "When do I start?" Dane replied. "Right now." From this day forward, Alden Grant became part of Hollow Forge, head of security, right-hand man, the man who stood between the workshop and the world. He established security protocols. He changed the locks, installed cameras, made a deal with the locals from Rusty Corner to report any strangers, an A-rank veteran who could stand on 2 feet again. It was better not to ask why or for whom. Meanwhile, the workshop continued to grow. There were now more than 30 clients. Orders were pouring in. Knives, swords, armor, gauntlets, spears, shields. Dane worked 18 hours a day and still couldn't keep up. The system tracked the growth of his skill level. Every item he created granted experience. Every new material unlocked recipes. The disassembly skill reached level 3. Now Dane could break materials down into atomic components and reassemble them from scratch. The synthesis skill reached level 2. The combinations became more complex. Multi-layered armor, composite blades, hybrid materials that didn't exist in nature. But the main breakthrough lay ahead. Constructs, the third ability, autonomous mechanisms. By the end of the second month, Dane had gathered enough materials for his first experiment. 2 C-rank cores, a set of bones from a wyvern's wing, 4 eyes from a shadow spider. The wing provided the frame, the cores provided energy, the eyes provided sensors. Dane worked on the assembly for 3 days. The system guided him, but the construct was more complex than anything he had made before. It wasn't an object, it was a machine, with its own control circuitry, with feedback, with a basic set of behavioral commands that the system had embedded into its neural circuits. On the 3rd day, he activated the construct. The thing on the table twitched. It unfolded its wings. It turned its eyes. 4 red lights looked at Dane. Then the thing rose into the air, quietly, almost silently. It hovered half a meter from the ceiling. It turned. It surveyed the room. It returned to Dane. It hovered in front of his face. It waited. The system provided information. Construct, reconnaissance drone, Class C, range, 2 kilometers, sensors, visual, thermal, manometric, autonomy, 12 hours of continuous flight. Combat capabilities, none. Cost, undetermined. No analogs exist. Dane looked at the drone. The drone looked at Dane. 4 red eyes and motionless wings. Dane reached out his hand. The drone settled onto his palm. light, warm from its active cores, alive, not quite, but close. Dane gave it a name, number 7. There were no numbers 1 through 6. Dane just liked the number 7. Kira came into the workshop an hour later. She saw the drone. The drone saw Kira. It flew over, hovered in front of her face, tilted its body. Kira said it was cute. Dane said it was a reconnaissance unit, not a pet. Number 7 flew over to the tool rack. It picked up a screwdriver. It carried it to another rack. It put it down. It returned to its spot. Kira asked why it had done that. Dane checked the behavior code. There was no command to move objects. It was an error in the neural circuits, a bug. Kira said it was just its personality. Number 7 turned its eyes toward her. It blinked one of its 4. Dane decided not to argue. Over the next week, the drone became part of the workshop. It flew between the shelves and kept track of supplies. It brought tools when Dane reached for them. It warned of customer visits by vibrating its wings, and it hid small items in corners. Dane found his pliers in the ventilation shaft, a wrench behind a heating pipe, an S-rank core under a stack of armor. Whether it was a bug or just its personality remained an open question. The end of the second month. Hollow Forge was operating at full capacity. Turnover exceeded 20,000 gold. The arsenal of equipment had outfitted more than 40 hunters. None of them had suffered serious injuries over the past month. Statistics that could not go unnoticed. Attention came from 2 sides at the same time. First was Marcus Wayne. The bug of the Steel Dawn found out about Hollow Forge through a chain in 3 links. One of his guild noticed at an acquaintance from another unit's strange bracelet. White, bone, lightweight, with frosted pattern on surface. He asked where he got it. A friend said that he bought from a blacksmith who works with monster materials. The hunter told to Marcus. Marcus picked up all contacts. After 2 days, he knew the name. Dane Warhol, former technician, E rank, the One. Inventory. Marcus didn't believe it, sent 2 men to check. They returned with photos. The bug in the industrial zone. Sign, Hollow Forge. Shelving with bone weapons. And Dane. Working at the workbench in surrounded materials that are more than the budget, Steel Dawn. Marcus thought 3 days. Then sent the letter, an official one, on the guild letterhead. He offered Dana to return. The position, chief engineer. Salary of 20 times higher than before. A separate workshop on the base. Full access to materials from raids. Contract for 5 years. A letter arrived by courier. Alden accepted it at the door. He read it. Took it to Dane. Dane read it. Set it aside. He came back to work. After 2 days, Marcus received a reply. A small box. Inside was a knife made the ribs of a wyvern, one of first. From a note. Dane wrote that this knife is more than the guild. I agree. With, respectfully. Equipment. Marcus broke the knife in half, or tried to. He did work out. The from bone a wyvern class, with stronger steel and 6 times A-rank swordsman could even bend it. This angry Marcus even than the note. The second source of attention was more serious. TerraCore, the largest arms corporation in world, 60% for the awakened, headquarters in the capital, 12 factories, 8,000 employees. Annual turnover in hundreds gold. They learned about Hollow Forge not through rumors, through analytics. TerraCore monitored the 4 with accuracy down individual blade. Their algorithms noticed an anomaly. Over past 2 months in the eastern sector, sales of knives of S have to 14%. Sales of armor fell by 9%. Sales 2 to 11. With this, the mortality rate hunters in that same sector decreased by 22%. Someone replaced TerraCore with else. something better. Security. Security began an investigation. A week they came out on the forums. 2-2 on Ted Warner. Through 3 on Hollow Forge. Report was on the feel of 7 people across a long table made red wood. The chairman, Victor Thorne, 62 years old, built TerraCore from scratch. Started with a small smithy after a year after the fault. Now the company was veers and armed half the awakened in the country. He read the report. He looked at the photos. A bone knife. Bone armor. Characteristics exceeding those TerraCore by times. Price is half lower. Materials. Waste from landfills. Thorne asked who this man. They answered, E rank, 23 years old, no guild, no license, no training in metallurgy, a former repairman. Thorne asked how he did it. They told him they didn't know, that not a single TerraCore engineer could process monster bone, that the material breaks down under standard processing methods, that they'd tried heat, pressure, chemical etching, plasma cutting. Nothing works. Thorne was silent for a minute. Then he uttered a single word. Destroy. Not the man, the business. TerraCore started with legal pressure. Dane was working without a master's license, without registration with the association, without product quality certificates. Formally, every knife sold was a violation. A complaint was filed with the association the next day. 3 inspectors arrived at Rusty Corner a week later. Alden met them at the gate, let them in, without a fuss. The inspectors inspected the workshop, recorded the violations. Lack of a license, lack of registration, no documentation for materials, no certificates. They issued a fine, 10,000 gold, and an order to cease operations until all permits were obtained. 10,000, half a month's turnover. The licensing process takes 3 to 6 months. During that time, TerraCore would regain its footing. Customers will leave. Suppliers will find others. Hollow Forge will die before it even begins. Dane sat in the workshop, staring at the order. Number 7 hovered over his shoulder. Alden stood by the door. Kira sat at the workbench, twirling a knife in her hands. Silence. Dane was thinking. He needed a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Someone who knew how the association worked from the inside. Someone who could get the licensing done faster than the standard procedure. Someone who wasn't afraid of TerraCore. Kira said she knew such a person. Alice Tane, 26 years old, an association analyst, or rather, a former analyst. She quit 6 months ago because she was tired of covering up corporate schemes. She knew every paragraph of the charter, every loophole in the regulations, every official by name. Kira called her that same evening. Alice came the next day. Short, thin-framed glasses, a folder of documents under her arm. She surveyed the workshop, read the order, looked at the racks of weapons. Then she sat down at the table and opened the folder. She explained the situation. TerraCore was following the standard playbook. Legal pressure, inspections, fines, licensing delays. The goal is to suffocate the competitor with bureaucracy before they get off the ground. But there's a loophole. Paragraph 47B of the association's charter. Emergency licensing for unique abilities. If an awakened possesses a class or skill that no one else has, they can obtain a license through an expedited procedure. 14 days instead of 6 months. This requires confirmation from the system and a demonstration before the commission. Dane confirmed it. Monstro Mechanic, a unique class, the first and only bearer. Alice smiled. For the first time during the entire visit, she said that TerraCore would send mercenaries, and she would send lawyers, and she suggested guessing who was scarier. She got to work immediately. The application for emergency licensing was sent to the association that same day. At the same time, Alice filed a counterclaim against TerraCore for using administrative resources to suppress competition. Paragraph 112A. A fine for the corporation if confirmed. 50,000 gold pieces. TerraCore hadn't expected a counterattack. Their lawyers were the best in the country. But Alice knew the system not as a lawyer. She knew it as an engineer knows a mechanism. Every screw, every gear, every gap you could stick a crowbar through. While the legal battle was heating up, Dane kept working. Officially, the workshop was on hold. In reality, he was assembling it every night. Alden guarded the perimeter. Kira carried materials along a new route through the old tunnels under the industrial zone. Number 7 kept watch from the roof and warned of any visitors. On the 12th day after the application was submitted, a response arrived. The association's commission had scheduled a demonstration. In 2 days. The main hall of headquarters. 5 experts, 2 representatives from the corporate sector, one of them from TerraCore. Dane knew this was his chance. One. The only one. If he failed the demonstration, Hollow Forge would be shut down. If he passed, he would receive a license and legal protection that TerraCore couldn't brush off. 2 days. Dane spent them in the workshop, preparing. Not a speech, not a presentation. Objects. 3 things that would show the commission what the monstro-mechanic class was worth. A knife made from a wyvern's rib. A breastplate made from an armored crab's shell. And number 7, a living construct. A flying drone made from a monster's bones and eyes, something the world had never seen before. On the morning of the demonstration, Dane stood in front of the mirror in the workshop. Dark circles under his eyes, calluses on his fingers. A shirt he'd bought yesterday because all the others were stained with grease and manna. Alden stood behind him. Kira was waiting in the car. Alice had left for headquarters an hour early to check the documents. Number 7 sat on Dane's shoulder, calm. 4 eyes looked ahead. Dane grabbed the bag of items. He stepped out, closed the door, turned the key, and drove off to prove to the world that the trash in landfills was worth more than they thought. Headquarters of the Awakened occupied an entire block in the center of the capital. 12 floors of glass and concrete, flags with the emblem on roof, security on every entrance. Dane walked through the main doors and felt as Room 7 on his shoulder clutched claws tighter. The drone reacted to concentration mana in the building. Here, hundreds awakened, and the air buzzed with energy. Alice met him in lobby. The folder with documents. Glasses adjusted, faces calm. She ran him down to the demonstration hall, a large room with high ceiling. In center is a long table. Behind it sat experts, 3 men, 2 women, all in the association, badges with rank on lapels. On the left of the main table are armchairs, representatives, the corporate sector. One of them. A man on an expensive suit, a representative, TerraCore. Dane recognized the logo on badge. 3 gears in a triangle. On the right, 3 in a row of chairs for spectators, half empty. A few journalists from industry publications, a couple officials. Marcus Wayne. Dane saw him and for a second stopped. Marcus sat in second row, his crossed across chest. Her face is stony. He came to look, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of spite, maybe to see failure. Dane turned away. He walked to the table in center of the room. He put her bag. Alice sat next with the documents. The chair introduced himself. Dr. Ray Sanders, A rank, former field expert, now head of licensing. He explained the procedure. Dane must demonstrate his skill, show that he is, and that his product complies with safety. The commission will decide by a votes. 3 out 5. Dane nodded. He took from his the first item. From ribs of a wyvern, I put on table. The white blade glinted under the lamps. Sanders took a knife. He twirled in his hands, passed it to my colleagues. Everyone examined it. One of experts activated the skill. Dane saw how his eyes lit up blue. The expert frowned. He said that organic material, bone, but processed by he cannot determine. The structure is compromised. This key point. Standard processing of the bone destroy the internal canals. Dane preserved them. The expert asked how. Dane explained. His class, Monster Mechanic, allows separate material along natural layers. Do not cut, do not break. Separate. How to separate mica into planes. Each layer retains its properties. Then, layers are combined into a new configuration. Also along natural lines of tension. Material does resist because that it is not to that he is. It is A that is laid in its structure. Silence in the room. Sanders asked him to continue. Dane took out the breastplate. He placed it next to the knife. Pale blue. Veins of frost. Lightweight. The expert with the scanning skill activated his ability again. He looked at it for a long time. Then he took off his glasses and wiped them. He put them back on. He looked again. He said there was a circuit inside the breastplate, a closed system of channels through which residual mana circulates, a cooling effect, self-repair. This isn't just armor. It's a mana engineering construct. The TerraCore representative leaned forward. His expression changed. From bored, it became tense. He asked what the breastplate was made of. Dane answered. Class A Ice Wolf bones, Class B Armored Crab armor plates, an S-rank core. The representative asked where Dane got his materials. Dane answered. Dumps, scrap markets, supplies from partner hunters, material that others throw away. The representative leaned back in his chair. He made a note in his notebook. His pen moved quickly. Sanders asked for the third item. Dane turned to the bag. He unzipped the side pocket. Number 7 flew out on its own. It didn't wait for a command. It rose to the ceiling. It hovered. 4 red eyes scanned the room. Then the drone descended smoothly and hovered over the commission's table. The silence became absolute. The journalists stopped typing. Marcus Wayne rose from his chair. The TerraCore representative dropped his pen. Sanders stared at the drone without blinking. He asked what it was. Dane answered. A construct. An autonomous reconnaissance drone. A frame made from wyvern wing bones. Sensors from the eyes of a shadow spider. 2 C-rank cores. Capable of independent flight within a 2-kilometer radius. 12 hours of autonomous operation. Visual, thermal, and mana sensing scanning. Number 7 seemed to sense that they were talking about him. It turned around, flew over to the expert with the scanning skill, hovered in front of his face, tilted its body. The expert recoiled, then cautiously reached out his hand. The drone landed on his palm. Light, warm, alive and not alive at the same time. The expert said the construct had a nervous system, primitive but functional. Control circuits are woven into the bone frame, feedback through sensors, basic behavioral patterns. He asked if the drone could act on its own. Dane confirmed it. Number 7 has limited autonomy. It carries out basic commands, patrols the territory, reacts to threats. Sometimes it exhibits unprogrammed behavior. Dane didn't mention the hidden tools. Sanders asked the key question. Could anyone else replicate this? Without the Monstro Mechanic class, Dane answered honestly, no. Without his class, the bones are just bones. Analysis is impossible without the skill. Synthesis is impossible without skill. Constructs are impossible without skill. TerraCore could hire 1,000 engineers, and they wouldn't be able to make even a knife. The TerraCore representative stood up, his face flushed. He declared that products without standard certification are dangerous, that there are no guarantees of durability, that organic materials can degrade. that the association should not license technology that has not undergone a full cycle of testing. Alice stood next to Dane. She opened a folder. She took out the documents, the results of independent testing. She had conducted it over the past 2 weeks. She hired a lab not affiliated with TerraCore. Knife, strength test, withstands a load 6 times greater than a steel counterpart. Chest plate, ballistic test, protection class B+, confirmed. Material stability, 2-month monitoring, degradation, 0. Manocirculation stable, self-repair confirmed. Alice placed the documents on the table. She looked at the TerraCore representative. Calm, no smile. The representative sat back down. Sanders had called the committee together for a meeting, 15 minutes. Dane stood in the hallway and waited. Number 7 sat on his shoulder. Kira stood nearby. Alden was by the wall. Alice was checking her phone. Marcus Wayne walked past. He stopped. He looked at Dane. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He walked away. 15 minutes later, the doors opened. Sanders read out the decision. 4 votes out of 5. Dane Warhol, Monstra Mechanic class, Master's license granted. Registration in the Registry of Unique Abilities confirmed. HoloForge is granted licensed workshop status. 1 vote against. The expert appointed under the corporate sector quota. TerraCore. Dane wasn't surprised. Alice handed him the folder with the license. Then she pulled out a second folder, a counter-complaint. The association had accepted it for review. TerraCore would have to explain why they had initiated an inspection 3 days after their analytics department received data on HoloForge. The coincidence seemed unconvincing. Dane walked out of the association building with the license in his hands. The sun beat down on his face. Number 7 took off and circled overhead. Kira stood by the car, smiling. Alden nodded. Alice put the folders in her briefcase and said this was just the beginning. That TerraCore wouldn't stop. That the license protected against bureaucracy, but not against other methods. Dane knew. But today he stood in the sun with the license and a drone overhead. And for the first time in 3 months, he allowed himself not to think about tomorrow. The license changed everything. For first week following the HoloForge received more pre-orders than in the previous 2 months. Journalists who were in wrote articles. Headlines were sensational. E-rank master creates weapons from monster waste. Bone armor surpasses steel. The association has licensed the first Monstro mechanics. Forums of hunters exploded. The About HoloForge was released in the top 2 hours. 3,000 comments per day. Half didn't believe it. The other half wanted to buy it. Dane read the comments and understood that basement in Rajavam Corner is no suit him. He needs a real space. In Alice, he found the building. Former warehouse on the edge of the Birth and Commercial District. 3 floors. 400 square meters on floor. Rent 40,000 gold per year. Dane signed a contract. First floor became a workshop. The sorting assembly test chamber for products. Second floor. Warehouse for briveling floor and analysis. Third. Office. Meeting room. Recreation break with a fold-out bed on which Dane slept more often than at home. The move took a week. Alden organized security. 4 cameras on each floor. Alarm system. Armored door. He hired 2 former S-rank who left from guilds after injuries. Paid well. They didn't ask questions. Kira redirected the flow of materials. Now to her have even 3 hunter suppliers, all specialized in pure extraction. Kira trained them personally. Minimal damage. Maximum preservation. Every monster was butchered into the field like a surgical patient and not as a carcass. Alice took the office on 3rd floor and set up a legal defense. The contracts with clients, agreements on confidentiality, patent applications for methods processing. It could patent the class monstromechanics, but could protect specific items and technological processes. 23 patents for the first month in new building. Dane was working. Every day. Every night. List of grew faster than he could carry out. He needed some helpers, but find people was difficult. Class Monster Mechanic was unique. No one could do analysis or synthesis. But preparatory work could be any competent technician. Sorting of materials, preliminary cleaning, calibration of tools, documentation. Dane hired the first 4 craftsmen through Ted Warner. Former gunsmiths, blacksmiths, mechanics, people who understood materials and tools. Dane taught them himself. He showed how to handle with bones, how to determine the quality of, how to prepare the ingredients for synthesis. Final assembly he did himself, always. That was a narrow bottleneck. One person, one pair of hands, one class. But productivity tripled. A month in the new building. Turnover, 70,000 gold coins. Client base, 120 hunters. From them, our A rank. Satisfaction rating, 100%. Not single complaints, not a returns. Losses among customers. Hollow forge. 0 deaths, 3 minor injuries. For that same period among hunters with TerraCore in that same sector. 4 deaths. 41 injuries. The figures spoke for themselves. Then came Hayes Mallory. It was 19 years, and he was the strongest fighter Dane had ever seen. S rank, one of the top 11 in the country. He woke up 2 years ago. In 2 years, he'd closed more A-rank portals than any other hunter had in a decade. They called him the Storm, because after his attack, about as much remained of the monster as remains of a tree after a lightning strike. Hayes arrived without warning. He just opened the door and walked in. Alden tried to stop him. Hayes walked past as if Alden weren't there. Not rudely, not aggressively. He just walked past, like the wind passing through the leaves. Alden was an A rank with a titanium bone prosthesis, and he didn't even have time to raise a hand. Hayes found Dane in the workshop. Dane was assembling a set of gauntlets from the shell of a stone scorpion. He looked up. He saw a guy a head taller than himself, light hair, eyes that glowed with a barely perceptible golden light. S-rank mana radiated so strongly that number 7 darted into a corner and hid behind a shelf. Hayes looked at the shelves, at the tools, at the bones and carapaces, at the half-finished gauntlets in Dane's hands. Then he said he needed a sword. Dane asked what kind. Hayes said that any sword he used broke after the 3rd strike, that TerraCore steel blades couldn't withstand his mana, that he channeled power into the blade and the steel shattered like glass, that in 2 years he'd broken more than 60 swords, that he needed a blade that could hold up. Dane fell silent. S-rank mana. That's a whole different level of energy. No material he's used so far can withstand that kind of strain. S-rank bone. No. B rank. No. A rank. Maybe. For a few strikes. He needs S-rank material, which he doesn't have. Dane said so outright. He said he could make a sword but needed S-rank materials. S-rank monster bones or armor, which were impossible to buy because S-rank portals appeared only once every 6 months, and the association took the materials afterward. Hayes was silent for a second. Then he smiled. He said that in 2 weeks he was going to an A-rank portal. The highest A rank, almost S rank. A boss monster. A basilisk. Basilisk bones are among the densest of all A-rank creatures. Hayes said that usually he pulverizes the monster completely. But if Dane needs whole bones, he could try to strike more carefully. Dane nodded. Hayes turned toward the exit. He stopped. He looked at number 7 peeking out from behind the shelf. Then he looked at Dane. He said that he kills monsters, and Dane turns them into something alive. He asked which of them was scarier. He left without waiting for an answer. For 2 weeks, Dane prepared. He studied everything he could find about basilisks. The system displayed the data. Basilisk bones contain mineralized mana, a crystalline lattice, strength at the border between A and S rank. If Hayes brought the spine and ribs intact, Dane would be able to forge a sword that wouldn't break under S rank mana. Theoretically. 2 weeks later, Hayes showed up again. Behind him, 2 hunters were dragging a container. Inside lay a basilisk skeleton, almost intact. Hayes had really gone all out. The skull was shattered. The tail was broken in 3 places. But the spine, ribs, and pelvic bones were intact. Dane opened the container and activated analysis. The system spit out the data, and Dane felt a wave of heat run down his spine. Density, off the A-rank scale. Mana, crystallized within the bone structure at the molecular level. Processing potential, maximum. It was the best material he'd ever held in his hands. Dane locked himself in the workshop for 8 days. He let no one in, not even Kira, not even Alden. Only number 7 flew inside and brought him tools. Dissecting the basilisk's bones took 2 days. They resisted. The crystallized mana refused to break apart. Dane worked millimeter by millimeter, structural analysis at the limit. His eyes ached from the constant strain. His hands trembled with fatigue, but he kept going. On the 3rd day, he isolated the main component, the central rod from the basilisk's spinal column. Perfectly straight, hard as diamond, with crystalline mana inside that reacted to touch. The next 5 days. Synthesis. Dane assembled the sword layer by layer. The spine became the core. The rib plates became the blade. The pelvic bone became the guard and the hilt. The crystalline mana created an internal circuit capable of accepting and holding S-rank energy, not extinguishing it, not dispersing it, holding it and directing it. On the 8th day, he opened the door. He stepped out with the sword. The blade was 2 meters long. Its color was dark gray with violet streaks. Crystalline mana shimmered deep within the material. The sword weighed 3 kilograms, half as light as a steel counterpart of the same length. The system assessed it. A sword made of basilisk bones, class A+, borderline S, mana capacity. Capable of withstanding up to 12 full strikes from an S-rank fighter without degradation. Self-repair of the crystalline lattice. Full regeneration in 48 hours of rest. Cost. Undetermined. No analogs exist. Hayes took the sword. He gripped the hilt. His mana surged into the blade. Violet veins flared. The blade hummed. Hayes swung and struck the steel test block. The block was cut in half. Clean. Effortless. The sword didn't even waver in his hand. Hayes looked at the blade, then at Dane. His eyes burned gold. He said one word. More. Terracor wasn't to lose. A counterclaim struck against him harder than expected. The association has ordered an audit. The fine of 50,000 gold was confirmed. The press picked up on it. Headlines. The largest corporation tried to stifle a lone craftsman. Trust of Terracor has to 7% over week. Victor Thorne called an emergency meeting. A closed-door meeting. No minutes. 6 people. Board of Directors -1. Thorne described the situation. Legal attack failed. Public pressure is impossible. After the demonstration, the association defends Hollow Forge as a view of a unique class. Direct attack is not allowed. Alden Grant and Hayes Mallory, A rank and S rank, suicide. Thorne suggested another path, buyout. If it is impossible to destroy, you must buy it. Suggest Dana such amount from which it is impossible refuse. Absorb Hollow Forge. Become a master. Integrate into corporation. Control. Financial director cited the figure. 500,000 gold for complete takeover, plus salary Dane 2,000 per year, plus our own laboratory, plus unlimited access to materials. Thorne approved. The proposal was sent via the official channel. The courier in a suit, envelope with seal, gold embossing. Alice opened the envelope. She read it. She showed to Dane. Dane read twice. 500,000. More than he will earn in 5 years at current pace. Our laboratory, with a budget of which he could dream of. Access to the materials that TerraCore purchased in bulk from guilds from all the S-rank bones. Cores of monsters. All he was. Dane put the letter on the table. He looked at Alice, at Alden, at Kira, who entered with a bag of materials and stopped when she saw their faces. At room 7, which stuck over the table, and turned his eyes toward the letter as if could read. Dane asked Alice, what would happen if he accepts? Alice replied calmly, if he accepts, TerraCore will gain control over his class. They decide that he is doing. For whom? What price? His products will part their catalog. With their markup, a bib which costs 12,000 will be sold for 35. How them steal counterparts? Access to bone equipment will be only those who can afford the price. Hunters from and B rank, who are currently buying from Deanna directly, will remain with steel. Mortality will return to previous levels. Dane nodded. He wrote the answer on the back of same letter. One proposal. A workshop is stronger a guild and definitely stronger a corporation. Sent back. Thorne received a reply. Read it. Crumpled the paper. Threw it at the trash can. Then I took out phone and dialed the number whose wasn't existed not in single directory. Fangs. Black market. Illegal operations. Smuggling of monster materials. Experiments with prohibited methods for nuclei. Fangs existed in the shadow 7 years. From the first day of the rift. They traded everything that UB sold openly. The ode of monsters for alchemical experiments. Organs for black transplantation. Live specimens from portals for underground rental properties. He managed Fangs, a man who was his griff. No one knew his real name. No one had seen his face. Only voice on phone and the money that appeared on the books. Thorne hadn't worked with Fangs before, not for moral reasons, for practical ones. The black market was unpredictable. But now the practical considerations had changed. Thorne offered Griff a deal. TerraCore would turn a blind eye to Fangs' operations in the eastern sector. In exchange, Fangs takes Dane, alive, with his class, with his knowledge. Griff listened. He was silent. Then he named his price. 100,000 gold pieces and full access to 3 TerraCore warehouses on the outskirts of the capital. Thorne agreed. A week later, everything was ready. Dane didn't know. He was working. There were so many orders that he started prioritizing clients. First, the hunters heading into dangerous portals. Then those who needed to replace damaged gear. Then everyone else. The waiting list stretched out to 2 months. Kira suggested raising prices. Dane refused. He said that the point of his work wasn't about money, that every hunter with his armor is one living person instead of one dead one, that he values lives, not gold. Kira looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded and went to get the materials. She didn't say she thought the same thing, but Dane noticed that the next day she brought twice as much as usual and didn't take any money. The end of the 3rd month. Dane began work on a project that changed the scale of things. A turret. Not a weapon for a hunter. A stationary firing point. Autonomous. To be installed at the portal entrance. The idea came from Kira. She explained that during the B-rank portal cleanup last week, the group lost a tank at the entrance. Monsters were coming out in waves. The tank held the door for 4 minutes. On the 5th, he took a hit. They carried him out on a stretcher. If there had been a firing point at the entrance that automatically fired at any monster crossing the perimeter, the tank would be alive and well. Dane thought it over. He looked at his supplies. He had a Class A fire salamander skull, massive, with 3 horns, with channels through which the salamander had spewed jets of flame in life. An A-rank core, stable, powerful. The system unfolded the blueprint, a turret, a base made from the pelvic bones of an armored crab, a swivel mechanism made from joints, a barrel, the salamander's skull, the horns as guides, the flame channels as a delivery system, the core as an energy source. Sensors from the eyes of a shadow spider for automatic targeting. Dane had been building it for 2 weeks. It was the most ambitious construct since number 7, but 10 times more complex. The drone was light, small. The turret was a stationary combat complex. 80 kilograms, 1.20 meters in height, 3 firing channels with independent guidance, a 50-meter radius of destruction. A control system based on neural circuits made from ice wolf fibers. Automatic target acquisition, friend or foe. Hunters are marked with tags. Anyone without a tag. Target. On the 15th day, Dane activated the turret. It stood in the test chamber on the 1st floor. 3 horns swiveled, eyes glowed red. The system locked onto the test target, a steel plate 20 meters away. The turret fired. A cluster of concentrated flames struck the plate. The 2-centimeter-thick steel vaporized. It didn't melt. It vaporized. Dane stood behind the protective screen and looked at the hole in the wall where the plate had been. Number 7 hid behind his back. Alden whistled. Kira said she wanted 10 of those. The system provided an assessment. Turret, salamander, Class A. Rate of fire, 1 shot every 4 seconds. Ammunition, limited by core capacity. At full charge, 40 shots. Reload. Core replacement, 3 minutes. Cost, undetermined. No analogs exist. Addendum. Casualties in units using stationary fire support are expected to decrease by 60 to 70%. Dane reread the last line. 60 to 70%. That's not just a number. That's dozens of lives every month. He began mass production. There were plenty of materials. Salamander skulls were in the dump. No one was taking them. The bones of armored crabs, too. Kira was getting the A-rang projectiles. Dane sold the first batch of 3 turrets to the association. Alice signed the contract. Official. With warranties. With maintenance. Price per unit. 15,000 gold. TerraCore sold stationary fire complexes for 25,000. Steel. Electric. With ammunition consumption. With a limited barrel life. With a crew of 2. Dane's turret was autonomous. It required no ammunition. It reloaded in 3 minutes, and it fired a flame that vaporized steel. The association installed the first turret at the entrance to the B-rank portal in the eastern sector. Test raid. A group of 6 hunters. The portal was swarming with bone chimeras. Previously, such a raid would have cost at least 1 serious injury. This time, the turret met the first wave of monsters with 3 shots. 3 chimeras vaporized at the entrance. The 4th took a direct hit while attempting to flank. A marksman from the group finished off the 5th. The raid took 40 minutes instead of the usual 2 hours. Casualties, 0. Not even a scratch. The group commander wrote a report. 1 line. The Salamander turret has changed the rules of clearance. I recommend immediate deployment at all B-rank portals and above. The attack occurred at night. Within 3 days after the first turret, Dane worked alone in the workshop. It was 2 o'clock at night. Alden left at midnight after his shift. The guards were on duty on first floor at the entrance. Kira left in the evening. Room 7 patrolled the roof. Dane was gathering a second batch turrets. 3 units. Time for in a week. It was focused on skull of the salamander when number 7 flew into the blunt of the work at speed. The drone crashed into rack. It fell. It got up. Began to vibrate its wings at a frequency that Dane had for the first time. Alarm. Dane dropped his tools and looked at the camera. The screen on wall showed a Darman of first floor. The door has been forced open. The door which Alden installed personally was in seconds. In the lobby there was people, 7 people. Black uniforms, masks, no insignia. 2 S-rank of S-rank were lying on floor, alive. Dane saw as her hearth up of one of them. Stunned. Not killed. Professionally. Quickly. No fuss. Dane got it. Fangs. He didn't know about the Blundwoods with Torn. Didn't what had been ordered. But he knew the reputation Fangs. Black uniform, masks, living targets. They came not to kill. They came to take them away. 7 people, at least B rank each, against E rank master without combat skills. Mathematics was simple and brutal. Dane could fight. He could run. The goal to first floor are blocked. The windows on second and third floors on a height 10 meters. The jump from such height for E rank this fractures or death. At him had perhaps be 2 minutes until that before they get up. Dane acted. He acted. Their hands moved faster than Mai could give orders. He grabbed the turret, unfinished, 1 of 3. The skull of the salamander was installed. The core is charged. Sensors are connected. But the guidance is calibrated, and rotary mechanism is secured. The turret could shoot automatically, but it could shoot. Dane set her on workbench. He pointed the horns toward the docks of the turret, activated the core manually. The channels of the flame have heated up. The skull buzzed. Then he grabbed the second object, a bib, made the shell-armored crab, B+. From supplies. Order from the client. Not his size, too big. It doesn't matter. Put over jacket. Tightened the straps. The third item. Sword. From Ice of Wolf. A minus. Demonstration sample. Dane didn't know use, but he was sharp and heavy. That is enough. Fourth. Number 7. Dane handed the command, with his voice. The first time in a time. He said 1 word. Alden. The drone dashed toward the window and disappeared into the night. 2 kilometers to the apartment. Room 7 will overcome them in 4 minutes, if Alden understands the signal. If he manages get there. If. The steps on the stairs. Heavy. Steady. They didn't in a hurry. They knew that run had to run. The door to the opened. The first entered. Tall. Broad-shouldered. The mask covered his face. In his a short blade. Steel. In it the second. A third. They walked in a line. Professionally. Each was in control his sector. Dane stood behind the workbench. The turret was aimed at the door. A sword in his hand. A breastplate on his body. The first one saw the turret. He stopped. He raised his hand. The others froze. Silence. The first one was assessing the situation. Dane could see his eyes moving behind the mask. The turret. An unusual design. A skull. Horns. It was unclear what it was or what it was capable of. Dane said they could leave. That the turret fired a flame that vaporized steel. That the first shot would be for whoever took a step. The first man was silent. Then he turned his head toward the others. A gesture. 2 men broke away and moved along the walls, flanking. Dane realized the bluff hadn't worked. They were professionals. They saw that the turret wasn't moving, that it was manually aimed, that Dane could only fire in one direction. 2 on the flanks, 5 from the front. Dane pulled the trigger. The turret fired. The ball of flame didn't hit the first one, into the wall next to him, on purpose. The concrete flared up, shrapnel spattered, heat washed over the group. The first one recoiled. The 2 on the flanks froze. Dane proved the turret worked. He gained 5 seconds, maybe 10. Then the first one recovered. He lunged forward, fast, V-rank speed. Dane pulled the trigger again, missed. The projectile hit the ceiling. The concrete melted. The first one was already at the workbench. He flipped it over. The turret fell, rolled away. Dane was flung against the wall, a blow to the chest plate. The armored crab's shell held. Dane was pinned against the wall, but his bones were intact. He swung his sword, clumsily, jerky. The blade slid along the attacker's arm. It sliced through his forearm, cutting through his uniform. The ice wolf's bone cut through the fabric and skin like paper. The attacker hissed. He stepped back. But another was already there. A blow to the side. The breastplate took it. A blow to the head. Dane dodged on reflex, partially. A fist slid across his temple. Darkness flashed before his eyes. Dane fell to one knee. The sword flew from his hand. The third one piled on top, pinned him to the floor. His wrists were pinned. A fourth man pulled out a syringe. Dane flinched. A fifth pinned his legs down. The syringe was approaching his neck. Dane saw the needle, long, thin, a tranquilizer. They want him alive, unconscious, transportable. A sound, a heavy blow against the building's wall, from outside, so powerful it made the floor shake. Then a second, a third. The workshop wall cracked and exploded inward. Alden Grant stood in the breach, a leg made of titanium bone, concrete dust on his shoulders, eyes calm and utterly frenzied at the same time. A-rank tank, with a leg that strikes harder than a battering ram. Number 7 hovered behind him. 4 red eyes burned in a cloud of dust. Alden didn't speak. He stepped into the breach. The nearest attacker spun around. He struck. Alden took the blow on his forearm. He didn't flinch. A counterattack with a kick made of titan bone. The attacker flew across the entire workshop and crashed into the far wall. He didn't get up. 2 rushed at him simultaneously. Alden grabbed the first one by the throat, lifted him with one hand. The second one struck him in the back. Alden didn't even turn around. He threw the first one aside. He turned around. A punch, a crunch. The second one fell. The remaining 4 regrouped. They formed a semicircle. They drew their weapons. Not blades, artifacts. 2 energy discharge devices, prohibited weapons. They fire concentrated mana. They might be effective against an A-rank. Alden knew that. He stood between them and Dane. Dane was sitting on the floor trying to get up. His head was spinning from the blow. The first shot hit Alden in the chest. He staggered. He didn't fall. The second in the shoulder. The third in the leg made of titan bone. A ricochet. Alden charged at them, through the gunfire, step by step, like a wall that moves. They fired again and again. Alden didn't stop. His body was smoking from the hits. Burn marks were spreading across his shirt. But he kept going. 5 meters. 3. 1. Alden reached the first one. A blow. The shocker flew out of his hands. The second one tried to retreat. Alden grabbed him and threw him over his hip. The third ran for the exit. Alden didn't chase after him. The fourth dropped his weapon and raised his hands. 3 minutes later, it was all over. 6 lay on the workshop floor. 1 had escaped through the window. Alden stood amid the destruction, breathing heavily. Burns on his chest and shoulders, but nothing serious. An A-rank body and a will that wouldn't let him fall. Dane got to his feet. His head ached. His temple was swollen, but his eyes saw clearly. He looked at Alden. Alden looked at him. He nodded. Then he looked at the turret lying on the floor. He picked it up, put it back in place. The turret was intact. Dane walked over to one of the bodies. He removed the mask. An unfamiliar face. No identifying marks. A professional mercenary. The black market. Fangs. Alice arrived 20 minutes later. Kira 30 minutes later. The police an hour later. The association 2 hours later. By morning, the workshop was cordoned off. 6 detainees were handed over to investigators. Alice worked all night, gathering evidence, piecing together the chain of events. Fangs, mercenaries, a kidnapping contract. Who ordered it? Proving the connection to TerraCore was difficult. Thorne used 3 layers of middlemen, but Alice knew how to dig, and she was angry. Dane sat in the office on the 3rd floor and looked at the hole in the workshop wall. Number 7 sat on his lap, quiet, tired. The drone had flown 4 kilometers round trip in 8 minutes, top speed, the whole way. Dane stroked its body. The wyvern wing bone was warm, familiarly warm. After the attack, Dane didn't sleep for days. Not because of fear, because of rage. Cold, calculating. He sat in workshop and assembled. He didn't set orders. Defense. For 2 days, he built 3 things. The first, a perimeter. 8 sensors from Shadow of the Spider installed in the corners of the work on the roof and at entrances. Each is connected to the central circuit from nerve fibers. The circuit is connected to the Borg in the workshop. Any creature within a radius 100 meters from the building was displayed on the Borg in real time. Heat, mana, movement. It is impossible to go unnoticed. Second, 2 additional turrets, installed on roof, with full guidance, calibrated, automatic, radius of overlapped all approaches to the building. Anyone who crosses the perimeter without marker will receive a warning shot. The second shot will be a warning shot. The third point, Dane put together himself a suit. Not armor, it's suit. Lightweight, underclothing. Chest plate made the shell armor thin as cardboard but strong as B-rank armor. Bracers made Ice and Wolf hidden under the sleeves of the jacket. Leg from bone of under trousers. Total weight, 2 kilograms. Inconspicuous. Constant. From now on, Dane wore protection at all times. Alice it meant was her own. 4 days after the Borg, she went out on contact between Fangs and TerraCore. Not direct. One of detained mercenaries spoke after that as the association proposed a deal. Immunity in exchange for information. Mercenary didn't the name of the client, but knew the intermediary. The intermediary was a former security company that served the TerraCore. Alice pulled on the thread. A week later, she had a chain of 4 links. TerraCore, the security firm, the middleman. Fangs. Every link was documented. Contracts, transfers, call logs. Alice submitted the materials to the association, and simultaneously to the district attorney's office. For the first time in its history, TerraCore found itself under criminal investigation. Thorne hired the best lawyers. They began to drag out the process. Motions, recusals, procedural complaints. The investigation could drag on for years. Alice knew that. She wasn't counting on a quick victory in court. She was counting on the pressure. The press picked up the story. The largest arms corporation had hired thugs to kidnap a lone master craftsman. The headlines were devastating. TerraCore's approval rating plummeted 23% in 2 weeks. Stock prices tanked. Contracts with the guilds began to be renegotiated. 3 major guilds refused to renew and switched to Hollow Forge. Dane accepted their orders. The workshop was running at full capacity. 12 craftsmen, 3 shifts, around the clock. Dane did the final assembly of every item, 18 hours a day, sometimes 20. Kira made him eat. Alden made him sleep at least 4 hours. Number 7 brought him coffee. No one taught him to do this, he just started. The 4th month, the 5th, 6th. Hollow Forge grew like a living organism. The 3rd floor became the analytical center. Alice managed legal affairs and contracts, logistics, finances. She hired 2 assistants, former association analysts who had left after seeing from the inside how corporations manipulate the market. 2nd floor, warehouse and laboratory. 3 months' worth of materials in stock. Kira organized a network of 12 hunters across 5 sectors. Each was trained in clean extraction. Each received a quality bonus. Less than 5% waste. The best rate in the industry. 1st floor, workshop. Dane had expanded the team to 12 craftsmen, each specialized in their own stage: cleaning, sorting, pre-processing, documentation, and testing. Dane still handled the final assembly himself, but now he had more time for each item because all the preparatory work ran like clockwork. By the end of the 6th month, the numbers spoke for themselves. Turnover: 180,000 gold pieces a month. TerraCore had lost 30% of the market in the eastern sector. Hollow Forge client base: 340 hunters. Of those, 21 were A rank, 2 S rank. Hayes Mallory and another hunter named Lyra Vance, who joined after hearing from Hayes about the basilisk sword. Salamander turrets stood at the entrances to 11 portals. Casualty statistics for these portals had dropped by 72%. 72. The association signed a long-term contract. 200 turrets over the course of a year. Dane did the math. 200 turrets. At the current production rate, that's 14 months of work. We need more people, more space, more materials. But most importantly, we need the next step. The turrets were changing their tactics for clearing the portals, but the strategy was being changed by another project. A new generation reconnaissance drone. Not number 7. That was the first prototype. Rough, with bugs that became part of its character. The new drone was supposed to do what no hunter could: see through the walls of the portal. Portals were black boxes. When a group went inside, they didn't know what awaited them. What monsters? How many? Where the boss was? Where the traps were? Every raid started blindly. It killed people. Dane had been working on the new drone for a month. Number 7 hung around nearby and sometimes hid parts in the ventilation ducts. The new drone was smaller, lighter, faster, and most importantly, its sensors were made from the eyes of a phase ghost, a monster that exists between dimensions. Its eyes see through barriers, through walls, through spatial rifts, through portals. Dane named it the Eye. When the Eye was activated in front of the portal for the first time, it transmitted a complete map of the interior to the screen. 5 floors of the dungeon, 42 monsters, a boss on the 5th level, 3 traps, 2 dead ends. The optimal route. The group that went in first with this map cleared the B-rank portal in 40 minutes without a single injury. The group commander was crying at the exit, not out of joy, out of anger. Because 6 months ago, his partner had died in the same portal due to an ambush that no one had seen coming. If I had existed back then, his partner would still be alive. The association immediately placed an order: 20 eyes by the end of the quarter. A contract for an amount that Alice refused to state aloud. She only said that this figure would force TerraCore to rethink its business model. Dane didn't celebrate. He sat in the workshop that evening after the contract was signed, staring at the blueprints. A sketch lay before him. Not a turret, not a drone, a construct he both feared and desired. A golem. A combat golem made of the armor and bones of the highest tier monsters. Autonomous, 4 meters tall, 12 tons, capable of clearing a portal without a single person inside. He didn't yet know he would call it Baby. But the blueprint was already lying before him, and his hands were already reaching for the materials. The golem took 3 months, the longest project in the history Hollow Forge. Dane began with the frame. Spinal spine consists titanium A range, that very material of which he made the day for Alden. But here the scale is different. The spine of the golem consisted of 22 segments. Each is cut from separate bone. Each is fitted to the next with precision, to 1/10 of a grass. Joints made cartilage plates of the horseshoe crab, flexible, durable, self-lubricating, thanks account residual lubrication. Ribs from stone scorpion, 12 pairs. Thoracic chest of the grass was armored capsule. Inside it, Dane placed 3 A-rank cores, energy heart. 3 cores worked in sync through a circuit from nerve fibers of the wolf. Together, they generated a stream of mana, sufficient to move a 12-ton structure along the course. 6 hours of operation. Legs. Thigh bones of the basilisk, shins of titanium of a titan. Feet made armored plates armored crab with shock-absorbing structure. Each step of the golem weighed a ton, literally. The arms. Shoulder bones made from the ribs of a top-tier A-rank wyvern. Forearms made from fused vertebrae of an ice wolf. The hands. 28 bony phalanges, each with independent movement. The golem could clench its fist with enough force to crush a steel ball, or pick up an egg without breaking the shell. A precision that Dane was more proud of than brute strength. The head. A basilisk skull. The very same one from which Dane had made a sword for Hayes. The remaining fragments of the skull fit perfectly for the golem's upper section. Inside were 6 sensors from the eyes of a shadow spider and 2 from the eyes of a phase ghost. The golem saw everything, in any spectrum, through walls, through barriers, through portals. The control system was the most complex part. Nerve circuits made from ice wolf fibers ran through its entire body. 700 meters of fibers, every centimeter laid by hand. Dane worked with a magnifying glass and tweezers like a neurosurgeon. One mistake, and the circuit would short out. The cores would overheat. Explosion. Everyone helped him. Kira held the components while he soldered the circuits. Alden lifted and turned sections that weighed half a ton each. The craftsman prepared materials around the clock. Even number 7 participated. He brought small parts. He illuminated dark corners with his eyes. Once, he brought a flower and placed it inside the golem's chest cavity. Dane found it 2 days later when he was connecting the 3rd core. He didn't remove it. 3 months, 60 days, of which Dane slept exactly 0 hours more than 4. He lost 8 kilograms. Dark circles, the color of old bruises, had settled under his eyes. His hands shook from lack of sleep. But he didn't stop. On the 90th day, the golem was assembled. 4 meters tall, 12 tons, pale gray with purple streaks from the basilisk's bones. It stood in the center of the workshop, taking up almost all the space. Its head touched the ceiling. Dane stood before it and looked up. Then he activated it. The golem's eyes lit up. 8 lights. 6 red, 2 purple. The golem turned its head, looked down, at Dane, raised its right hand, slowly, opened its palm. 28 phalanges moved smoothly, without a creak, without a jerk. It took a step. The floor cracked under its weight. A second step. A third. The golem walked across the workshop to the wall. It stopped, turned around, returned to its place. Every movement controlled, precise. The system issued an assessment. Construct Titan. Class A+, borderline S. Height 4.2 meters. Mass 12.4 tons. Power reserve. 6 hours of continuous operation. Full-spectrum sensor system. Armor equivalent to an A-rank tank. Striking power exceeds that of an A-rank fighter by a factor of 3. Full autonomy. Cost. Undetermined. No analogs exist. Addendum. Please do not call it baby. It weighs 12 tons. Dane read the addendum. He looked at the golem. The golem looked at Dane with its 8 eyes. Dane said one word. Baby. The system flashed. Protest rejected. Name registered. First test. A B-rank portal in the northern sector. The association had allocated a portal that hadn't been closed for 2 weeks due to a shortage of teams. According to Oka, there were 46 monsters and a B-rank boss inside. Nest Chimera. Usually, a portal like this takes a group of 8 hunters and 4 hours of work. Kid went in alone. Dane controlled the operation from the console at the entrance. Number 7 flew alongside the golem and streamed the footage. First level, 12 bone hounds. Kid raised his leg and brought it down. 3 hounds under his foot. The rest rushed to attack. Teeth gnawed at the golem's armor, to no avail. The kid walked through the pack like a man walks through tall grass. Debris remained in his wake. Second level, 8 armored beetles. The kid grabbed one in his right hand, squeezed. The shell burst. He crushed the rest with his feet or punched them with his fists. Every blow left a crater in the stone floor. Third level, 4th, 5th. The kid cleared the entire portal in 47 minutes. Not a single scratch on his body. The boss, a nest chimera, a 3-headed creature the size of a bus. It struck the kid with all 3 heads at once. The golem took a step back, 1, then grabbed the middle head and tore it off. The 2 remaining ones screeched. The kid tore off the left one, then the right. The portal closed 12 seconds after the boss's death. Malyush stepped out of the portal with the chimera's 3 heads in his hands. He placed them in front of Dane, carefully, like a cat bringing its prey. Dane looked at the heads, then at Malyush, then at number 7, who had perched on the golem's shoulder and looked absurdly small. Alden stood nearby. Kira, Alice, 12 masters, 24 hunters from the nearest guilds who had come to watch. Silence. Then one of the hunters said he needed to change his pants. Laughter. Nervous. Admiring. Frightened. Dane didn't laugh. He was counting. Materials from the chimera. 3 skulls. Bones. Carapaces. The core of a B-rank boss. The kid wasn't just clearing out portals. He was gathering materials, which Dane processed into new gear, which made the hunters stronger, who brought back materials for new constructs. A closed loop, a self-sustaining system. A workshop that feeds itself and grows with every portal. Dane finally saw the whole picture. He saw where the road was leading, and he smiled. A year had passed since that night when Dane stood at the waith of a wyvern in his hands. 1 year. 365 days. Hollowforge took now 1 floor, but in building. 3 floors of the main building. And for testing constructs, a separate hangar for Malyush. Storage of measuring half a field. 12 masters became 30. Kira ran a network of 20 suppliers. Alden commanded the security of 8 men. Alice was the legal department of 4 specialists. Ted Warner became the head in work for customers. His first knife made bone of a wyvern hung on the wall in reception area behind glass, as a reminder. Dane made 2 little ones, the second and third, identical to the first. 3 golems, 3 autonomous combat machines. They cleared entrances according schedule. 2 portals per a day. Materials from each went back to the workshop. The cycle worked flawlessly. TerraCore was losing market share, 30% in the eastern sector, 22% in the northern sector, 17 in Central. Their shares fell to 40% from the start the investigation. Thorne fired the director, then the head of security, then 3 members of the council. He held on the wheel of the sinking ship and didn't let go. The investigation connection with Fangs progressed slowly. The lawyers Thorne were expensive and skilled, but Alice was patient. She gathered evidence just Dane collected constructs, layer by layer, a link by link, until the become unbreakable. In meant Fangs did disappeared. The failure with the kidnapping cost them their and 6 fighters. Griff was in fury, but it because the losses, because the fact that I saw. Report his people described the workshop, turrets, drone, weapons made bones, suit by the who stopped the B rank. Griff realized that didn't Thorne. Dane is not a competitor. Dane is a era. And Fangs wanted to be part this era, not like enemies, as partners or masters. Griff sent a message, not through intermediaries, directly. By email, Hollow Forge, which was run Ted. The post was short. Meeting, neutral territory, no weapons, no escort. Griff wants to talk. Alice said not go. Alden said not go. Kira said not go, but she added that if Dane goes, she'll go with him. Dane thought. Fangs controlled the black of monster materials. Them had access to resources that else have. The things of the monsters, living nuclei, materials from closed zones where association did allow civilians, materials that could bring his constructs onto a level. Dane replied to the message. Agreed, but to his terms. Location he chooses himself. He takes 1 person. Griff also 1. Without masks. Griff agreed. The meeting took place at a cafe at the border, the industrial zone and residential neighborhood. Daytime. Time. People on the streets. Cameras on every corner. Dane came from Alden. Alden sat down at the table. He drank coffee. Leg from bone titanium tapped on the floor. A light rhythm. A reminder. The neck turned out not very tall man in his 50. Thin, gray temples. Hands are thin. Not a single scars. Not fighter. Organizer. He sat across from Dane and ordered tea. He spoke first. He said that apologized for the previous incident. What was order? Business. Nothing personal. What now with else? A proposal. Dane listened. Griff laid out on table. Fangs had access to the materials from 3 closed zones. Zone 9 to north. Cemetery S rank of monsters. Remains of that died of old age or were killed each other. The association fenced off the territory and no one let in. But Fangs got in. Griff offered supplies from there. S rank, materials of which Dana does and will in legal channels. Instead, Fangs wanted a cut. 30% of production made from their materials, and priority on special orders. Dane thought. S rank. From them, he could make things that he only theoretically existed on the lists of the system. Weapons, S-class. Armor that can withstand a S-rank monster. Constructs of the new generation. But Fangs were criminals. The work with them is a risk. Legal, reputational, physical. Alice will kill him. Dane looked at Griff, then said, no. Griff raised an eyebrow. Dane explained, he doesn't work with people who send mercenaries to his home. He doesn't work with smugglers. He doesn't work with those who trade live specimens for underground arenas. He knows what the Fangs are up to, and it doesn't sit well with him. Griff was silent. Then he asked what would happen if circumstances changed, if a threat arises that cannot be stopped with steel weapons, if the world is on the brink. Would Dane come then? Dane said that if the world is on the brink, he'll find the materials himself. Griff nodded. He stood up, left a business card on the table. Plain white cardstock, a single phone number. He left. Alden finished his coffee. He looked at Dane. Dane put the business card in his pocket. He didn't throw it away. He put it away, just in case. A week after the meeting, the association declared a state of emergency. An A-plus class portal had opened in the southern sector, the most powerful portal in the last 2 years. According to intelligence reports, a boss monster on the border of S rank was inside. A poisonous hydra, 9 heads, regeneration, acidic blood. Not a single guild would take on the cleanup. Too dangerous. Casualties were guaranteed. The association turned to Hollow Forge, officially. A contract for a cleanup operation using constructs. The first contract of its kind in history. Dane accepted. Preparation took 4 days. 3 little ones, full nuclear charge. 8 salamander turrets to be deployed along the perimeter. 2 eyes for reconnaissance. Number 7 for coordination. Hayes Mallory showed up on his own, not under contract, said he wanted to watch and help if needed. His sword made of basilisk bones hung behind his back. Kira donned a full set of Ice Wolf bone armor, said she was going inside with the golems, not for combat, to extract materials. A hydra is an S-rank creature. Its bones are worth a fortune. If the heads are removed carefully, each one is a separate project. Dane looked at her, then at Hayes, then at the 3 golems standing in a row at the portal entrance, at Alden with the turrets, at number 7 overhead, at the 20 hunters from the association standing in a cordon. A year ago, he stood alone in the junkyard. Today, he had an army behind him. Dane activated the controls. 3 golems stepped into the portal. The ground shook beneath them. The Eye flew in first and began transmitting the map. 7 levels, 80 monsters, the boss at the bottom, a hydra, waiting. 3 little ones went down. They cleared the first level in 4 minutes, the second in 6, the third in 3. Class B and A monsters crashed against the golem's armor like waves against a rock. The 4th level, the 5th, the 6th. Total losses among the monsters, minimal damage to the golems, scratches on the armor, a dent on the second kid's shoulder from the tail strike of some armored monster. Nothing serious. 7th level, the Hydra. Dane saw it through the Oka cameras. Huge, 12 meters tall, 9 heads on long necks, each head the size of a car. Yellow eyes. Acid dripped from its mouths, burning through stone. 3 little ones entered the arena. The Hydra turned all 9 heads toward them and attacked. The first golem took the blow from 3 heads at once. It held firm. It grabbed one head, squeezed. The skull's bones cracked. The Hydra screeched and jerked. The second golem flanked it. He punched the base of the middle neck. A crunch. The head went limp. The third golem attacked from below. He knocked out the Hydra's front paw. The creature staggered, but the Hydra regenerated. The broken neck began to heal. The crushed head regained its shape. Acidic blood spattered onto the first golem. The armor hissed. It didn't penetrate, but it left gouges. The battle lasted 22 minutes. 3 golems against an S-rank monster. Dane controlled everything from the console upstairs. He coordinated the attacks. He changed tactics. He pulled back the damaged ones and brought in fresh ones. This wasn't a fight. It was a siege, methodical, merciless. The Hydra couldn't kill the golems. The golems couldn't kill the Hydra because of its regeneration. A stalemate. Dane looked at Hayes. Hayes stood at the entrance to the portal, sword in hand, golden eyes burning. He was waiting. Dane nodded. Hayes stepped into the portal. An S-rank fighter and 3 golems against a single monster. Hayes cleared 7 levels in 12 seconds. His speed was beyond human perception. He appeared in the arena like a flash. 3 golems were pinning the Hydra against the wall. All 9 heads were gripped by bony hands. The Hydra struggled but couldn't break free. Hayes poured all his mana into a single strike. The sword made of basilisk bones flashed purple. He struck at the base, where the 9 necks converged into a single body. The blow sliced the Hydra from throat to tail. Regeneration didn't have time to kick in. The cut was too clean, the mana too powerful. The Hydra collapsed. 9 heads fell, one after another. The portal closed. Kira entered 3 minutes later, with tools, with bags, with that expression on her face that Dane knew, the expression of a surgeon before an operation. She worked for 2 hours, removed everything: 9 skulls, the spinal column, ribs, the core, organs, acid glands. The bags could barely hold it all. Dane stood upstairs and looked at the screen. The system was already showing him recipes, made from S-rank Hydra materials, weapons the world had never seen, armor that could withstand anything, next-generation constructs. For the first time, he had enough S-rank materials. For the first time, the horizon ceased to be a horizon and became a blueprint. A year and a half, 18 months since the system unlocked the Monstro Technician class. HoloForge was no longer just a workshop. It had become an institute. 52 employees, 2 buildings. Contracts with the association worth a sum so large that Alice kept the documents in a safe because the numbers on paper looked like a typo. Dane had been working with Hydra materials for 2 months. From 9 skulls, he had made 9 next-generation turrets. Salamander 2. Not fire, acid, concentrated, directed. It burned through A-rank armor in half a second. Made from the Hydra's spine, the 4th golem. Baby 4. 40% stronger than the previous ones thanks to S-rank materials. From the ribs and the core. A set of armor for Hayes, S-rank, the first in the world. Hayes put it on and stood motionless for a minute. Then he said it felt like a mountain was hugging him. Warm, alive, indestructible. TerraCore was living out its final days as a monopoly. The investigation was nearing its conclusion. Alice had gathered a body of evidence that left no room for maneuver. A direct link between Thorn and the middleman. Recordings of negotiations, payment documents, testimony from 4 witnesses. The trial was set for 3 months later. Thorn knew he would lose. His lawyers knew it. The board of directors knew it. TerraCore's stock had fallen 60% from its peak. Half the factories were operating at a loss. Contracts were slipping away one after another. Thorn resigned, quietly, without a press conference. He just left. The new board chairman contacted Alice that same day. He proposed a settlement agreement, a full admission of guilt, compensation for the victims, restructuring of the company, abandonment of monopolistic practices, and an open contract with HoloForge to supply monster materials from factory warehouses at cost. Alice showed the proposal to Dane. Dane read it. He looked at the clause about materials. TerraCore's warehouses held 7 years' worth of monster materials, thousands of tons, which the corporation had bought up and stored simply so others couldn't get them. Without the monster mechanic class, they were useless. Now they were his. Dane agreed. The peace treaty was signed a week later. TerraCore ceased to be an enemy. It became a supplier. An irony the system would surely have noted. But the system had other concerns. Dane noticed this toward the end of the 18th month. System windows began to appear more frequently. Not in response to his actions, on their own. Short messages, warnings, hints. The system reported that portal activity had increased by 37% over the past 6 months. That the average portal rank had shifted upward. That A-rank portals were appearing 3 times more frequently than a year ago. That the statistical model indicated the approach of an Omega-class event. Dane asked what an Omega was. The system didn't respond immediately. The pause lasted 4 seconds. Dane had never seen the system hesitate before. Then the text appeared. The Omega Rift, an unclassified portal, appears once per cycle. Previous cycle, unknown. Data missing. A creature from the Omega Rift is invulnerable to conventional weapons and the magic of the Awakened. The only type of weapon capable of inflicting damage. Weapons made from monster materials. Dane reread it 3 times. Then he asked the next question. Why had his class appeared now? Why him specifically? The system responded more quickly. The monster mechanic class was created by the system in response to an approaching threat. The host was selected based on compatibility criteria. The structural analysis skill plus minimal combat potential plus maximum understanding of materials. Required training period, 2 years. Estimated time of the Omega Rift's appearance, 6 months. Dane sat in the dark workshop, staring at the blue light of the panel. 6 months. Half a year before the appearance of a creature that no hunter can kill. No mage, no S-rank fighter. A creature that only his weapon can kill. A weapon made of monsters. He didn't receive this class by chance, not by luck, not because he deserved it. The system knew. From the very beginning. It chose him not because he was worthy, but because the world would soon need something only he could do. Dane closed the panel. He stood up. He left the workshop. He went up to the 3rd floor. He gathered everyone. Alden, Kira, Alice, Hayes, Ted, the Masters, everyone who was in the building. He told them. Everything. Without holding anything back. The Omega Rift, the unclassified, 6 months, the only weapon. Silence lasted a minute. Then Alden asked what needed to be done. Dane answered. Get ready. 6 months turned into a race. Dane reorganized his work of the workshop. Commercial orders half to the craftsman, standard knives, armor, gauntlets. They could collect without him. The final assembly took on Kira. Dane taught her hand synthesis. Without a class it not could work with raw bones, but collect from prepared ingredients. The quality declined to 10%. Acceptable. Dane concentrated on 1. Arsenal for the Omega. First month. 3 new golem. The kid from the 5th to 7th. Each is assembled from the best materials that were in stock. Titanium of a titan. Basilisk of a basilisk. Core's hydra. These golems were stronger the first by 70%, faster, stronger, with improved sensors and control circuits. The control system had changed too. Dane could no longer coordinate the 7 from a single console. Too much data. Decisions had to be made too quickly. He built a command center. A separate room with 7 screens, 1 for each golem. A central screen for the big picture, and a neural interface. A helmet made from the bones of a phase ghost. You put it on and see what the golems see. You feel what their sensors feel. You control them with your mind, not with your hands. Dane tested the interface for 3 days. The first day, he felt nauseous after every session. His brain couldn't handle the data stream from 7 bodies at once. On the second day, the nausea subsided. On the third, he coordinated all 7 in a training battle. Simultaneously. Like a conductor. Second month. Turrets, 20 units. Salamander 3. 3rd generation. Extended range. Automatic targeting up to S rank. Rate of fire doubled. Cores replaced with hybrids of Hydra cores and Basilisk crystals. Ammo capacity. 120 shots instead of 40. 3rd month. Drones. Not I for reconnaissance. Combat drones. Small, fast. A swarm of 40 units, each the size of a pigeon. Frame made from wyvern wings. Sensors from the eyes of a shadow spider. Attack. A concentrated pulse of mana from a miniature S-rank core. 1 drone is not dangerous. 40 at once. like a swarm of wasps with energy stingers. Number 7 had been upgraded. New wings made from the bones of a phantom, improved sensors, and the role of swarm coordinator. He became the commander of 40 drones. He controlled them as if they were part of himself. Dane hadn't programmed that. Number 7 just started. He led the drones onto the roof, formed them into a formation, conducted a training flight. Without a command, a glitch, or a quirk, Dane no longer doubted the answer. The 4th month. Weapons for Hayes. The S-rank set has been completely upgraded. The armor has been reinforced with plates made from Hydra carapace. The sword has been reforged. A layer of crystallized Hydra mana has been added to the basilisk bone core. Mana capacity doubled. The blade could withstand not 12, but 30 full strikes from an S-rank fighter. For Alden, a new prosthesis. Not just a leg, a complete combat system. A leg made of titan bone with integrated muscle amplifiers from basilisk tendons. A knee pad with an energy shield. A foot with an impact mechanism. A single kick could break through a bunker wall. For Kira, an upgraded armor set, A+, Border S, with acid protection from Hydra glands. Its blades are reforged from Hydra ribs, self-sharpening, coated with a wafer-thin layer of acid that activates upon impact. 5th month. Weapons for everyone. Dane armed 50 hunters whom the Association had assigned to defend the capital. Each received a full set. Armor, weapons, a communicator made of neural circuits for battlefield communication. 20 A-rank fighters, 25 B-rank, 5 C-rank coordinators. The 6th month. The last. Dane was assembling the final project. Not a weapon, not armor, not a golem, a projectile. A single one. Made from all the S-rank materials he had left. A Hydra core encased in basilisk bone. Crystallized mana compressed to a density at which the system refused to display numbers. Instead of digits, it wrote, "Beyond limits." A projectile for the turret that Dane was building separately. Not the salamander. Something else. A dragon skull. Highest A rank. The only specimen in TerraCore's stockpile. It had been stored in the warehouse for 7 years. No one knew what to do with it. Dane knew. The dragon turret. 1 shot, 1 shell. Then a reload that would take a day. But that single shot carried concentrated energy equivalent to a full power strike from an S-rank fighter. In the form of a beam. Directed. Precise. Up to a kilometer away. The system assessed the turret and the shell. Then it issued a warning. Do not use within city limits. Collateral damage radius, 300 meters. The day before the estimated date, Dane stood in the hangar and looked at his army. 7 golems in a row. The little one was first on the right, the oldest. With a flower inside its chest cavity that had long since withered, but which Dane had never removed. 20 Salamander 3 turrets, 1 dragon, 40 combat drones, and number 7 at the front of the formation. A swarm. 50 sets of gear on the racks, weapons, armor, communicators, a command center with a neural interface. Alden stood to the right. A new leg, new armor, the same old eyes, calm. Kira on the left, blades made from the ribs of a hydra, ice armor with acid protection, ready. Alice behind her, no armor, no weapons, carrying a folder of documents, contracts for civilian evacuation, protocols for cooperation with the Association, insurance policies in case of destruction. She fought with paperwork and won. Hayes in front of the hangar, sword on his back, golden eyes gazing at the sky, waiting. Marcus Wayne sent a message this morning, a short one. He wrote that the Steel Dawn Guild was ready for battle and asked where to assemble. Dane replied with coordinates. He didn't add a word. not the time. Number 7 perched on Dane's shoulder. 4 eyes looked ahead. The drone hadn't hidden its tools for a week. It hadn't brought any flowers. It hadn't blinked. It was serious. As if it knew. Dane stroked its hull. A wyvern bone, warm, as always. The night passed in silence. In the morning, the sky cracked. The rift Omega opened over the center of the capital in 7:12 a.m. Not as a portal. Ordinary portals were holes in space, round, stable, with clear edges. This was a rupture. The sky cracked at the horizon to the horizon. A black line ran through them, like a crack in glass. Then the line widened. From it poured, not light, the absence of light, darkness that glowed. Sirens howled through all city. The civil was automatically. Evacuation. Millions people in the streets. Cars. Chaos. Alice activated evacuation. Evacuation which had a month ago. Routes, shelters, coordinators at every intersection. Paper war saved lives. Right? Right. Dane was in command. Command. Hollow forge. Neural helmet on head. 7 screens in front of my eyes. 7 golems stood in 2 kilometers from the epicenter. Turrets deployed around the perimeter in 3 rings. Outer, middle, inner. 20 salamander and 1 dragon. Combat drones in the air, 40 units, number 7 in the chapter. Roy circled over the area like a flock of birds.